topic today is a very good one we're calling it Agile Vital Signs. But the idea is we have covered the topic of Agile adoption a couple of times, if not more, in these webinar series. So after companies have adopted Agile and they're going through some level of motions of Agile practices, whether they're daily Scrum, whether they are planning poker and so on, the question comes up: are we really doing Agile or being Agile? Which is, are you really just following the motions and the practices and the ceremonies that are part and parcel of Agile, or are you really understanding the essence and the core spirit of Agile and really being an Agile software team? So I think that's the topic we'll cover today. Damon will share with us what he calls the vital signs of a healthy Agile adoption. So the point is the existence of a meeting with the name of a stand-up a healthy sign? Is the fact that tasks are now called stories is a healthy sign? So he'll cover a lot of such topics and really we provide some real concrete guidance on what to look for to gauge whether you have a healthy Agile practice or not really. So that's the topic today. Let me introduce Damon, our featured presenter. Damon is Chief Agilist at Allyson Group. He is a regular presenter in these monthly webinar series. He is an Agile coach and trainer who specializes in helping companies find and implement their ideal way of working in order to increase profits and find and serve new markets faster. His specialties include Agile development, of course, but also software configuration management, software development, automation, and lean transformation. So I'm delighted to have Damon cover this Agile topic of Agile Vital Signs. With that, let me do a double check. Damon, are you on?
I like how you called me Agile there.
I look at you, I think this is a bit Agile.
Yeah, I remember it nothing to do with me, but one time I was talking to somebody about Agile, and they said, "Oh, when did you invent that tool?"
There you go.
I thought, all right. I guess I'm giving this person their first introduction to Agile.
Yeah.
So Agile Vital Signs. This is a topic that sort of came up as a result of several engagements I was on, where I realized, the patient was not healthy, and the folks there didn't really realize it. So thus the idea of Agile Vital Signs.
Right.
So it all comes back to, at the end of the day, it all comes back to the values and principles. So I think that's a good place to start. And I'll just let people look at this for a moment and read through it just as a refresher. Right, so we're all familiar with these things, and at the end of the day, Agile is not about Scrum per se, it's not about stand-ups per se, but it is about things like motivated individuals, giving them the environment and support they need, trusting them to get the job done, using working software as the primary measure of progress, and one could argue that that's definitely an Agile Vital Sign. Right, so these are the things that talk about Agile, and when we're looking for vital signs, we're really looking to see if these things are actually happening or not. So Scrum, Kanban, XP, burnup charts, burndown charts, all very useful, and actually a burnup chart is an Agile Vital Sign, but it's not itself Agile, right? It's the principles and values that make somebody or an organization Agile. So from the manifesto comes the Agile community, many practitioners that have been working hard on Agile for many years, even before the manifesto came out in 2001. So the idea is that if you have the principles and values of the Agile manifesto, you're going to want to implement some of these tools. The tools themselves don't make you Agile. It's your belief in Agile that makes you Agile. The tools are just a way to implement it. So for instance, installing voting machines does not make you democratic. Being democratic is what makes you democratic. It's the voting machines that help you implement what you believe. So one of the tools that we use underlying the way that we do Agile engagements is something called the Agile Maturity Matrix. And so there's now over 50 indicators or vital signs, if you will, in the maturity matrix, and they all go from 0 to 4. And we'll use stand-ups as an example. So I'll just let you read through this for a moment. Right, so this is the same sort of format that's used in all 50 plus of the maturity matrix indicators. So we focus on sustainability, which is not quite necessarily agile, but if you think about it, there are many things to do to be agile. And you want to get some things to a level that they're sustainable so you can move on and work on other things. So for instance, with a stand-up, if it's the Scrum Master, if you're the Scrum Master and it's because of you that you're having the meetings, that's you exerting that effort for it to happen. It's not happening in a sustainable way. You could say that it's sustainable because you believe in it and you want it to happen, but if you go on vacation and people aren't there because they want to be there, it's not going to happen, so it's not really sustainable. And you have all kinds of things that are working against you and the team: complacency, inertia, resistance, impediments, right? These are the things that will take you away from sustainability. So if it's just you, it's not going to work. You've got to get other people, you've got to overcome the impediments, the resistance, the inertia, and complacency to get it to sustainable. Otherwise, all of your effort will fall back. So sustainable in the case of a stand-up would be 80% of the folks that show up are there, 80% of the folks on the team show up, they're there because they want to be, it's a quick meeting, it's focused on the team stories, not just I went to a bunch of meetings or something like that. Agile would be not only are you doing that, but let's say on the 7th or 8th day of an iteration, you can see that things aren't going well, right? And we'll talk more about that later, and the team adjusts to take that into account. Oh, we got to talk to the product owner, we should start taking on new stories, whatever it is. So this is something that you can download from us, and we'll give instructions on that in a moment. So this just gives an idea of what it covers. It covers the organization, team dynamics, team structure, and that's on an organization-wide perspective, but also team by team. Product things like invest, are the stories small, are they thinly sliced, are they vertically sliced? Are you doing the process mechanics? Are you doing the engineering practices? Are you doing things like TDD? So as I said, you can download this tool, and it is about 50 indicators times 5 different areas, the 5 different levels. So it's 250 different cells. Each cell has in it an in-English explanation, like with the stand-ups, of what it means to be at that place. And you can use it to figure out where you are, where you're going, and then track progress towards those goals. All right, so this gives you, and you can get a video of this later, but if you want to just write it down, you can go to our website and look for the Enterprise Agility Maturity Matrix, and you can download that. And it's free for you to use, and it's very helpful. It may also point you to areas where you want to learn more. So let's start looking at some of these specifics. So we sort of looked at stand-ups. Sometimes people put together what I like to call a Franken team, right? So you, oh, who's available today? Okay, so we got Joe, who's a tester, and he's never worked in this area, but he's available. And we got Sue, who's a developer, and she's worked in this area a little bit. It's unfortunate she doesn't get along well with Joe, but anyway, that's who available. So we'll put this team together, right? So it's alive, but is it really a team? So really, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a long-standing team, a team that is really a team. So if you think about it, if you think about a sports team, your favorite sports team, are they created and then recreated every game, or is it primarily the same people playing together well, right? So people that play mostly together and on a regular basis for a period of time, like a couple of seasons, for instance, in sports, those are going to be your better teams. And it's the same in software, right? People, they're going to learn about each other, they're going to get along well if they spend a lot of time together. So if you have So this is kind of a recommendation from us. There is some data behind this. I think actually the best place to look for data is Rally has a new study out that talks about keeping teams together and how allocated that they are, and you can get some more data from Rally. But our general recommendation is to try to keep allocation levels above 70%. You don't want to have folks on the team that are on 2 or 3 different teams. You want to try to make sure that they're just on one team. So looking at your allocation level is a good indicator of health. So the same thing is the length of time that folks are together. Now, there's no particular time that is guaranteed to work. But you can see if a team has been together a while, if they're still fighting with each other and not getting along, that's not a high-performing team, and that's not a good, healthy sign of agility. Agile teams work best when they're gelled, and that's one of the things you can find from the short iterations and the feedback loops is this team gelling or not? Are they getting work done on a regular basis or not? I mean, one of the best ways to see if a team is gelled is, are they productive? If they're not productive, it's not possible that they're gelled. Or I suppose they could be gelled, but they just don't really feel like working, and that's a different issue.
Hey, Damon,
right,
can we take one question on teams?
Sure.
So you made the point about 70% or higher commitment to being on the team. Is there any guidance on team interacting outside of work environment to bring the chemistry that needs to be there for the team? Or is it adequate for them to come in to spend whatever time they do as part of the day-to-day work and no informal kind of a socialization and other time kind of chemistry dimensions needed?
That's a great question. That could be a whole presentation all by itself. But just quickly, I've recently been reading. It's a little dated now, but the material is still great. I've been reading Teamwork is an Individual Skill, and one of the points that is made in there is that what really makes a team work well best together is to have a common sense of purpose and a common set of goals and a common mission. And so, the team building comes from, hey, we need to do this together. We need to get all this work at the end of the iteration done together. And that generally works best if it's a team effort. And so the act of doing Scrum can actually be a great team building activity. But at the end of the day, whether it's within work or outside of work, the idea is to get to know each other, to understand how each other works. Maybe that you've got somebody on the team that always has a poker face, and you might interpret that they're unhappy or whatever, but you get to know them and you realize, oh, they just have a poker face all the time. It has nothing to do with their inner state, and they're not mad at you. That's just their face. So absolutely, that's a good point.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. So if you're a Star Trek fan, you'll get the reference there. But one of the things that whether you're using the maturity matrix or some of the vital signs we talk about here today, or your own vital signs that you find useful, it's good to know what you're talking about when you're doing Agile. So sometimes, and this doesn't happen all over the place, I'm not saying that, but more frequently than I'd like, I'd see people saying we're doing Scrum, and if you use something like the maturity matrix to look and see what they're doing, they're really not doing any Agile except they have a Scrum meeting. I was talking to a friend who just joined a company who was all excited that they were doing Agile, and he called, and we were talking about a month after he was there, and he said, I was wrong. They have a Scrum meeting, which is a stand-up, and that's what they mean when they say they're doing Scrum, and it's an hour long, right? So the translation here is, we require developers to go to a 1-hour stand-up meeting every day. They're not there because they want to or they get anything out of it. Maybe it's a long status meeting every day. So it's important to understand what is it that you're actually doing to see, how Agile are you? How healthy are you? And when people say we're doing Scrum, that's almost meaningless. So a stand-up is a fantastic, speaking of stand-ups, stand-up is a fantastic way to see how healthy a particular team is. So let's take a look at this. Let's imagine together that we're going into the team room to do the morning stand-up or the afternoon stand-up or the evening stand-up, whenever you do it. if you're working with a distributed team, it might be later in the day or very early in the day. So you walk in, and this is what you see. Right now, no, you're not really going to physically see this, but I mean, all that you see is what you actually hear. So imagine that you hear, okay, people walk in and you hear, I worked on number 5316 yesterday, and I'll be in meetings all day today, no impediments. Right, so you could just read through this. It's interesting, but think about, you read through this, what do you actually know? What feeling do you have when you hear that, okay, everybody, good, stand up, see you tomorrow? Do you feel like you're okay? Do you feel like you're in trouble? For me, when I see something like this or hear something like this, I feel lost. I have no idea. It feels like, okay, we've gone through the motions here, but you don't actually have to be alive to go through the motions, right? It could be just that you're having a status meeting here, and it's very interesting. So the other thing that you could do here is you could have a burn down. So that's people talk about big visible charts. A burn down is a visible way of seeing what's going on. So if I walk in and I also see this, I have some new information now. I can see we have information on day 7, so we must be on day 8, and it looks like we're trying to burn down to 0 on day 10. So it looks like we have an iteration of 10 days, and we're on the 8th day. So we have 3 days to go here, and it looks like we haven't burnt anything down in a while. And so if we're burning down by hours, that looks like people are saying that the estimated time left is the same. Why? They may have given some clues in the stand-up, but I don't know really, which story is that attached to. I don't have that much information. So this is better. Burn downs are good, and this can help you see, if you're healthy or not, but it's not the best. So here's another example, and really what's going to work for you depends on your situation, but the idea is, can you walk and stand up and get a good sense, even as a casual observer, as to what's going on? So I want you to think now, you're responsible for this team's delivery. Your compensation is based on it, okay? So your quarterly bonus or whatever is based on the team doing well. So you walk in, you can see from this that it looks like it's probably day 4. So we're at the beginning of day 4. We got 7 days left here, and we got 3 story points done. We got 1 story all the way done. We got a bunch of stuff in implementation and nothing in testing, nothing that's ready to accept. So what would be your thought here? Just think to yourself, what would you walk in here? A common response at this point is, wow, seems like there's a lot of work in progress. Couldn't you have something in testing if you took on fewer stories? Why is there nothing in testing? Right? So it seems like there's too much work going on. But if I'm in this stand-up and I'm walking out, I'm feeling still pretty confident that we're going to be okay. Right? So this gives me a sense of what's going on, what might we change. And my advice walking out of here, if I'm on this team, might be, hey guys, let's not take anything else off the to-do list until we've done some more things and gotten them to done, okay? Because that's just not gonna be a good idea. All right, so now it's the 6th day. We've gotten 5 days. We have 5 days left to go. And here's where we are. We've got 3 stories done, 3 stories not started, 3 stories that have finished implementation are ready for testing, 2 stories that are done testing. Right, so it seems like at the end of the stand-up, some of the QA folks or whoever's going to do the testing is going to say, oh, I'll take on some of those stories, and life is going to be pretty good here, right? So that seems all right. Now imagine, this is our 3rd example, you walk in, it's 9:15, and you're responsible for this team. Here's the next slide. How do you feel? I don't know about you, but I would not feel too good. Right? So now I'm conflating sort of 2 ideas here: the health of how is this team doing in particular, and how is Agile doing in particular, right? So now, because I have all of this information, I have a card wall, whether it's electronic or physical. I know how many story points I'm trying to get done. I have it in the form of stories and all that. I have pretty much the information I need to know to see how this team is doing, and having that information is a sign of health, right? So if I walked into a hospital and I saw a lot of beds and I didn't see any information, any heart rate monitors, I didn't see any kind of diagnostic equipment, I would be pretty worried to be a patient in that hospital. And it's the exact same thing with Agile teams. If you don't see any instrumentation like this, that's kind of scary, right? So one example, I remember I was in an engagement a couple of weeks ago, and I knew that there was a team in trouble, but they couldn't see it. They had their electronic card wall set up so that it was completely obfuscated what was going on. And I asked them if they wouldn't mind changing it to get rid of all the swim lanes. And they were on, day 8. They had 3 days to go. So they clicked. It was very easy. They were using, I forget what they were using, but they clicked on something and they got rid of the swim lanes. And the whole team went, oh my God. And they had the most interesting stand-up ever. And I think, that was interesting to me to see how just having that information allowed them to be a much more agile team. And that insight that team had spread to other teams, and they're doing much better there now.
There's a question on this card wall topic.
Sure.
So if there was a situation where there's a team doing their stand-up and they all have access to the same card wall, but in their tool of choice, whatever tool they're using, whether it's Rally or version 1 or Pivotal Tracker, whatever they're using, but each team member is looking at the same burn up or burn down chart, they have the card wall and all that, but when they come to the pod to do their stand-up, there's nothing pasted on the wall, so they're not looking at any common picture. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I think so. If you're not looking at a common picture, then it's hard to have a conversation about the same things. You're then having a conversation about what you remember on the tool that you were looking at or whatever. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of what I'm saying here is that when you walk into the team room, or if you're distributed, when you walk into the chat room, if you will, it's important to all be looking at the same view and having the same idea of what's going on, right? So imagine you're, I don't know, trying to play baseball or something, and you don't have a common picture of what's going on, right? That's not going to work. It's the same thing with an Agile team. You all need to be in alignment and sharing the same picture.
All right, thanks. Just take one other quick question on the terminology you were using. I think someone is asking, you use the terminology of swim lanes. What were you really implying with swim lane?
Oh, yeah, swim lanes. Okay, sure. So a common thing with a card wall is the default, like what I'm showing here, is no swim lanes. You might have multiple swim lanes indicating that some stories are for different users. So you might have going from left to right, you might have a row that is only for Tom's stories and another one that's only for Sue's stories. And so in order to get a full picture of what's going on that's like this one, you have to scroll up and down and remember what you were seeing. And okay, Sue had one story that was an implementation and Tom had 2, so I guess that's 3. So if you remove all the swim lanes temporarily, you could see easily, oh, there's 2 stories in implementation, 2 stories in testing, etc. Actually, that's a great idea. Next time I run this, I'll show a jumbled mess, which will make it much clearer as an example.
Great, thanks.
Okay. All right. So interestingly, I remember before Agile, when I was doing traditional development, the word trust never really came up. You might say something offhand like, I don't really trust this person on the team or whatever, but it really didn't come up. But you know what the thing is, if you're trying to get work really done in 2 weeks with a bunch of other people, and you don't trust your teammates, it's really, really hard to do. So I strongly believe that the level of trust between teammates is an Agile vital sign, right? So that may not be one of the sort of metrics we're used to, the trust metric, if you will, but I think it's very important. So there's a couple of books out there, TrustWorks and Thin Book of Trust, and there's some others as well, and they all sort of overlap on these 4 areas. I like the ABCD that comes from one of them. But at the end of the day, when you're thinking about trust, it's really the folks that you have on the team with you, do you feel like that they have the skills necessary to get the work done? If they don't, it's going to be hard to trust them, right? So that doesn't mean that they can't grow those skills. It may be that there's some new skill, some new technology, whatever. but as people grow in their competence, you're going to trust them more. Do you believe what they say? Somebody says, yeah, absolutely, I'll get it done by Friday. And you think, oh, geez, again? Well, then there's not high integrity there. And that could be because they always overpromise. So you have to be very careful not to overpromise. Collaborative. If you're in trouble and you need help, do people say, oh, yeah, I'll help you? Or do they say, sorry, I have my own work I need to get done? And then reliability, right? Again, it's sort of, are you keeping promises? Are you acting responsibly? Something comes up unexpected, and do you talk about it, or do you just keep it to yourself? If I have a team member that keeps surprising me unpleasantly, I'm really not going to trust that person. I'm going to be looking to other people. And if that's happening across the whole team, that's not going to be a great team. It's not going to be a healthy, agile team, right? So there's a lot of ways that you can, take the pulse there in a lot of different ways. So these are a couple of methods that I like. A friend of mine came up with the rock, scissors, paper part of it, and Fist of Five has been out there for a while. So the idea of the sort of rock, scissors, paper is that, well, first, Fist of Five is you at the end of the stand-up, you might ask people, so how confident are you that we're going to, on a scale of 1 to 5, that we're actually going to get all this work done by the end of the iteration? And you might get, a bunch of 5s and a 1. And so it's not a peer pressure thing. You ask the person, well, why not? Because I'm the only QA person and we're way behind on testing and nobody's helping me? Oh, okay. And that's sort of a good way to get out some hidden information. Like if that person is the only person that has impediments, you might think, oh, well, that's too bad. But if it affects the whole team, that's important. The other thing you can do on teams where perhaps there's not high trust at the moment, or there's some nervousness, or maybe one team member is fairly dominant, is to do a secret ballot. You write down on a piece of paper, 1 through 5, how confident you are. And that can be done for shipping, that can be done for morale, that can be done for trust, that can be done at stand-up, it can be done at retrospective. It's very important to do some sort of taking of the pulse on a regular basis. Otherwise, you know what? You're kind of just going through the motions, or you may be, right? You don't really know. So there's a tool you can use. You can use a 3x5 card for this to pass it out. This particular instrument can be a little awkward, so you got to think about when to use it with a team. But this is sort of a secret ballot, anonymous thing that you do, and you'd have everybody rate, for yourself and others. So the others is, do you believe that 76 to 100% of the other folks on your team have the ability, the competence, the skills to get the work done, or do you think it's 25% to 0%? Now that doesn't mean that you think that they're bad people. It may be just that you need more Java skills on the team than you have. And then the same thing as a reflection on yourself. What do you think others think about you? And again, this can be a little uncomfortable, but this really helps find any underlying issues that may be affecting productivity of the team. And again, without a high trust between team members, it's hard to have a healthy Agile team. So product planning is a sort of broad area, and there's a number of Agile vital signs in this area. One that was kind of a recent heads up for me, it's interesting how you can have blind spots. I had a blind spot here that just because you show in a schedule and in training, or even if you're working with a bunch of teams, you can lose track of their individual schedules. I wasn't noticing that sometimes people would do their iteration planning before their iteration review. And so the interesting thing that would happen in iteration reviews was there'd be a lot of feedback that it was too late to stick it in the iteration plan because we already planned that. And you know what? The product owner's not here right now. So it's really to get accurate information, right? So taking the pulse, if you will, or getting information, metrics, or whatever is valuable. But if you're getting data without the right setup, it's worthless, right? So it's very important that your Agile feedback loop is set up, and so that you have iteration review first. And if you find there are new backlog items, those are taken into account during iteration planning, and then you do that planned work. Now, some organizations don't like that. They call that scope creep, or our dates are going to be off, or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you find some important information that means you should change your plan, it's not very healthy to ignore it, right? Cholesterol is getting a little high, or whatever, medical problem, and you ignore it, right? That's going to lead to problems. So it's important to do these things in the right order to get the right feedback, so you can actually apply the information, right? So it's one thing to take the pulse or get the information, then you need to apply that information. So this is another thing that sort of came up recently, is that we've been talking about product owner for ages in the Agile community. Unfortunately, very often it seems that it doesn't really work out. What happens is that you get maybe a product manager that is designated or appointed as the product owner, and from their perspective, that's all very interesting, and they just keep doing their job, their regular job, the regular way. And it takes time for organizations, especially larger organizations, to change that behavior. And I remember I was in a iteration planning meeting that was going on and on and on, and they were talking about so many details on the how and all that, and I couldn't quite figure out what's going on. And then eventually I said, why are you spending so much time in this level of detail? And they said, well, this is the only time that we have the product owner the whole 2 weeks. Okay, so I think an interesting concept here is whether, is the idea of a team backlog owner, right? So whether you have the product owner serving in this role or not, sometimes people have proxy product owners, and there's all kinds of things. And I'm not saying that that's great. And the preference is that the team backlog owner is the product owner. But this is a concept that helps really make it clear what's useful for a healthy team. For a team to be healthy, they need to have a single source of information on priority. They need a single person that is talking to them about what to do next. They need a single person to ask questions about, right? So the idea of the team backlog responsibilities of a product owner, and whether that's the product owner or not, you need one person that is attending all iteration planning meetings for that team, that they have enough work ready. And it doesn't mean that they have to get it ready, but they have to make sure that it's ready, that they have prioritized that work. The same person, not multiple people, the same person. They attend all iteration reviews. They're available to answer questions from that team about that iteration's backlog immediately most of the time, and perhaps there's a few hours delays once in a while. Sometimes people struggle, and I had somebody ask me the other day, have you seen a product owner that is responsible for all these things in other companies? And I thought that was a pretty interesting question, because, I mean, that is the definition of a product owner. So you can use this as a way to gauge whether or not product ownership is healthy for this particular team. So if there isn't a person, a single person that is doing all of these things, that is not healthy, right? And you need to figure that out. Now, one coping mechanism here, I haven't given a lot of coping mechanisms, but one coping mechanism here is that you have somebody designated as the team backlog owner or whatever. I know one organization that has a team that calls that person the mom, for whatever reason. Anyway, so they've designated a person to do all these things and to coordinate with the official product owner so that the team got what they needed. And basically, whenever there was a question, that person was able to answer questions and then get, to work with the product owner to make sure that that was correct. And eventually, what often happens when you do something like this is that the product owner realizes, well, wait a minute, I should be doing those things. Why is somebody else doing it? And that was that can be the aha moment. So having something like this available for people to look at and a checklist to go through and apply to your team is a great way to see if product ownership is healthy within your team. And also, if this is not a company-wide sort of thought across teams, then it's really, the company. At the end of the day, if one team is doing this or not doing this, that's interesting. But you want to make sure that the organization understands that this is important for healthy Agile teams.
Damon, can we take one question on product owner?
Absolutely. Yep.
So is it, would you consider it a red flag if a product owner was supporting more than one Scrum team? Say, at least let's start with 2. Is that a red flag? They were doing all of this, but for 2 teams.
That's a great question. Let me sidestep it for a moment and sort of give another way to think about it. So think about that product owner and those 2 teams and run this test. Is that product owner, that single product owner, able to attend all the iteration planning meetings for both teams? Now, you might need to slightly reschedule so that it is physically possible. Can he attend all iteration planning meetings, or she? Do they have 2 iterations worth of ready stories for both teams? Now, I personally have done this in the past, and the way I did it was I worked with the team, and they would work on getting some stories ready, and I would make sure that they were ready. You know, I delegated to other people that really just love to work with user stories. Does that person across both teams have the stories prioritized when they walk into the iteration planning meeting? If they want to prioritize it and use up everybody else's time while they're doing it, that's not right, so that would not count. Are they able to attend the iteration reviews for both teams? Are they able to answer questions from both teams immediately most of the time and a few hours delay once in a while? If so, then sure. Now, if you try it again with 3 teams and you start to say no, then they should go back to 2 teams and not attempt 3.
Right.
So that's sort of the way that I would think about that. So absolutely, that's okay, but they need to be able to answer all of these questions yes for all of the teams that they're interacting with.
Right. Great. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. So now you might not think of a schedule as a way to check out health. So this idea came to me a while back when I had the aha moment that many organizations treat Scrum as an overlay, and I know I'm sort of conflating Scrum and Agile. It's difficult to break that apart all the time, but anyway, Scrum, often people think of that as an overlay. So I have people that are on 5 teams, so they go to 5 stand-up meetings. And that's not what's intended. And people say, oh, you know, Agile, Scrum, all these meetings I got to go to, it's ridiculous. I hate Scrum. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. But that's not right. So let's take a look at an example, and this is really just an example. Your mileage may vary. But the idea is that any one individual that's on the team, and you know, going back to our product owner example, that's a little bit of an exception. But the members on the team, the developers, the QA, the BA folks, whatever, their schedule should look like this as an individual. They should be on one team, going to one stand-up and one iteration planning meeting. And other than the 3 hours and 15 minutes a week, the rest of it should be completely uninterrupted work. No other meetings, nothing, just work on the stories for that iteration. And if it doesn't look like this, you know, you could really think of it as clogged arteries, right? So all the time spent on, you know, process meetings or whatever that doesn't have to do with getting the work done, you should think of that as cholesterol in the arteries. You want to get rid of that. Now, it's not easy to do, but if you have a stand-up and a project status meeting, try to think if you can replace the project status meeting and instead have folks go to the stand-up meeting to get what they need. If you have iteration planning meetings that are going forever, maybe it's because the product owner isn't available throughout the iteration, you know, look into that. Right, so anything that deviates from this isn't necessarily bad, but examine whether or not you can change it or remove it or do something else so that it looks more like this. If you sketch out your schedule for the team members and it looks kind of like this, then great. That's really healthy.
Yeah, there's a question on where is it? Where is the customer demo in this picture?
Well, the word demo is interesting. That is a word that's commonly used, a showcase or something like that.
Right.
But iteration review, or in Scrum, the word is sprint review. That's the iteration review at the end there.
And can you talk a little bit about the backlog grooming that you have in week 2, how that works?
Certainly, right. So that's a great question. So backlog grooming sometimes is thought of as a small group getting together to get ready for iteration planning, but that's not what's intended here. I see iteration planning and backlog grooming as being identical, with the exception that in iteration planning, you're saying this is what we're going to do, and potentially saying and here's who we're going to have do it. And I don't mean assigning, I mean, people choosing. So really the same, the only difference is in backlog grooming, you're getting stories ready and focusing on the stories for the upcoming iteration, but you're not saying for sure that's what we're going to do. And where teams often start out as 2-hour iteration planning meeting. So the idea is if you do backlog grooming every other week, it's going to shrink the overall meeting and also give the product owner a chance to say, oh, wow, that story is definitely not ready. That gives me a week to get it ready before the next iteration planning meeting. Okay, so you know what? And I gotta say, I'm only human. I'm as guilty as anybody else at this. Sometimes you forget to, go do a checkup at the dentist or the doctor or whatever. But regular checkups are how you make sure that nothing's, going wrong or going off the rails. So whatever vital signs that you think are important, that you find are useful to you, and I would suggest that any of the ones that we cover today are useful or something to consider, you got to look at them on a regular basis. And when there's a problem, take action, right? So, we didn't have a single stand-up the whole week. Well, why is that? Because everybody's working on 3 different projects. Oh, why is that? So you can have those discussions about, why are these things happening? But if nobody's responsible for making sure that this is happening, then you can go off the rails, really quickly. I can't tell you how many organizations I've been into that say, we've been Agile for 3 years, and I say, oh, well, so let's talk about it, and you look at the history, and the first 6 months when they were going Agile, they were the most Agile, and then it sort of regressed from there. One team I was talking to recently, they did the daily stand-up only 3 times a week, which is funny that you have a daily stand-up only 3 times a week, but that's what they were doing. And often it's good to have this, if you can, in some way tied to goals, right? That there is a goal that people are doing the, doing the ceremonies on a regular basis and for good purpose. So here's a summary. I'm not, this will be in the recording. I'm not going to go through all of these details. It's sort of an eye chart. But this is a summary of some of the things that you could consider that are very low touch, very simple to do, won't take up a lot of time, and a good way to see. You could even use it as a checklist and go through and say, hey, are we doing these things? Are we not doing these things? Why not? And sometimes people will say, well, we can't do that here. So I want to give you a thought here, which is that Scrum in particular is not about can we do it or not. The idea is that if you want to be Agile, that you do it. And the things that you uncover that you think you're tempted to change or not do, those are the things that you want to do differently in your organization, because doing Scrum does not really get you a result. Doing Scrum uncovers the problems in your organization that is preventing you from getting results, right? So if you go to the doctor and they recommend changes, it's doing the changes that produces the better results, right? So just doing stand-ups and retrospectives all by themselves will do absolutely nothing. You have to take a look at what it's saying and make adjustments. All right, well, that is the presentation, and thank everybody for their time and for coming and for the questions.
Yes,
and we have some time now to go into further questions.
Excellent, thanks, Steven. So we have time for a few more questions, and I already have some in the backlog here, but let's give all in the audience a couple minutes, and in the meantime, let me just quickly introduce Synerzip while people are chiming in with the questions on the Q&A panel. So, Damon, if you wouldn't mind just advancing the pages here so I can do a quick introduction to Synerzip. You can go to the next page. For those of you in the audience today who don't know Synerzip, we are essentially a Agile product development services company. We serve as a partner to various software companies, helping them accelerate their product development velocity following Agile practices. We have a development center in India and a team on the US side. So with a dual shore team, we are able to provide a very capital efficient and a high quality software delivery process to our clients, and we tailor our Agile as appropriate in each environment. And then the final point, as Damon, you build out this page of 5 bullets, is the fact that for every client, we give them an option if they want to convert the team that is working for them as a captive team. So essentially allows our client to have a remote offshore Agile development team while they can convert that to their team whenever they feel like it. So that's in a nutshell. Let's go to the next page, which just gives a glimpse of our